What's up everyone, back again with another Gran Turismo 7 video. This time we're just going to be looking at what I think is the best car that's not the L500R for the Daily Race B on Deep Forest Raceway. So before the hybrid L500R was a thing, people were using the R32 GTR because it was a good combination of power, handling, it's all-wheel drive so it's easy to control, just good on race pace, so it's just a good pick all around. But I think I've since found a better car, the Toyota Celica GT4. I think it handles a bit better, it's faster on the straights, it brakes better, and I'm running significantly faster lap times with it. So I just thought I'd share this in case anyone is struggling with setting up a car and they don't have the credits for the L500R. So without further ado, let's see how this car is set up. So in addition to all the upgrades that you see here, I've also put on a wide body, all the aero bits, so the front, the side skirts, and the rear diffuser and the wing. And then I've also done custom wheels, 18-inch diameter, wide rims, and wide offsets. I don't know if those actually contribute to the handling characteristics of the car in the game. They should, but I don't know if they do, but they are on the car. So as far as the other upgrades you can see in the tuning sheet, we have the fully customized suspension, and then for some reason normal differential seems to be the way to go in all-wheel drive cars, as far as I know. I've tried tuning the fully customized diff, and I just haven't been able to get the same amount of traction out of corners as I have with the stock differential, no matter how I tune it. So I'm just going to leave that normal. It seems to be working well. Then we have the torque vectoring center diff, which is a must for any all-wheel drive car in my opinion. And then, as I said before, we have the full aero kit on the car. And then we have a lot of power upgrades. This build can get kind of expensive, but there's a reason to this. I'll explain that in a minute. But we have the full computer. Then we have ballast to make minimum weight, and then we also have the restrictor so we can fine-tune our power to maximize it. Then we also have the fully customizable racing transmission. And then for power parts, we have low RPM turbo, anti-lag, racing intercooler, all the racing intake and exhaust parts. For brakes, we have the extreme carbon brakes, and then we have racing pads, and then a brake controller. And then we have the racing clutch, and we've done a lot of engine tuning. We've done everything that's available in the tuning shop. So again, this can get kind of expensive. But then we have the stage 1 and 2 weight reduction, and then increased body rigidity. So the reason I bought all of those power parts is because I wanted to achieve this power curve here. So in these events, only your peak power is considered. Even if you're making like 10 horsepower for some reason all the way down at 1400, and then you peaked at 295 there, you'd still be limited to 295. So what you want to do is get as close to 295 as long as you can. So that's what I've done here. I've noticed this trend with a few parts, particularly the power restrictor. As you keep going down in restriction, your power curve actually inflates in the low end. And if you go all the way up, you can see my power curve really drops in the middle bottom end, which is not good. So you want that power curve to be as high as possible, as long as possible. And this set of upgrades seems to do that the best. You can even see if you go to the normal turbo, you're similar power, but your power curve is way off. So by building this way, you get much better power response across the RPM range. And by installing all these parts, it lets you get to a higher power to drop this restrictor more and more, which gets you to the power band that you want. You can also try the medium RPM turbo. I tried it, and you get a similar power curve, but you get a little less low-end torque. You get a tiny bit more top end, like a half a mile an hour, but I found that low-end torque to be much more valuable in the low-speed corners on exit. So, yeah, that's the reasoning behind these upgrades. It's pretty straightforward, and once you start to learn how to build like this, I think a lot of these tuning events will become a lot easier to build cars for. So now we'll go into the actual tune settings. I've played a lot of racing games, and almost all of them have some weird tuning trick that works for most of these settings, and they seem to have a lot in common. So we'll be going over some of those. So it's usually in your best interest to have minimum front ride height. You can play with this if you need to make performance point restrictions, but those aren't here, so we're just going to slam it. And then I like having the rear up some to get some rake on the car and get some more turn in. This is a good balance for me. You could adjust this as you see fit, drop it if you need less turn in, or raise it if you need more. The roll bars, for some reason in every racing game, stiff roll bars are the play. I don't know what it is, but the stiff rear bar is good because it gives you more rotation on throttle, which is what you need in an all-wheel drive car. And then the front just lets the car rotate off throttle more. This works in rear-wheel drive cars too, but you'd want to stiffen the front bar up more so you don't just lose the car. I've run 10 and 10 on multiple cars and it's been fine. But just typically go as stiff as you can and just tweak the balance from there, and you're usually in good shape. Damping, I usually go pretty low on compression and then pretty high on the expansion. For those from other games, this would be bump and this would be rebound. I drop the front a little bit just to rear bias it so I can get some more rotation as the dampers expand. Typically on throttle, that'll come into play. Natural frequency, it's not super important, which is kind of odd because it's normally very important in a real car, but you can just kind of throw the rear end pretty high and then the front pretty low and just get a general balance that you like. And then if it's enough rotation, then you're good. Again, it's a very lax approach to tuning in this game, but it works. And then the biggest one to me is low camber. This works in Project Cars, this works in Forza. I've seen it work in other games, and it works here. Some cars like a little bit of camber, but 0-0 in this car is honestly great. I get better turn-in response off throttle, but get better grip on throttle. I can kind of feel what the car is doing a bit more, which are all good things. And since the wheels are so straight, that you actually get a little bit more straight line speed. Like maybe like between zeroing out the toe and the camber, you get like a mile an hour more on the straights, which is always a plus. Then the toe, I don't need any rear toe. I don't want rear end stability in this car. And then just a tiny bit of toe out on the front for a little bit more turn in. And then as far as the torque vectoring center diff goes, I think 50-50 is the way to go. There's no reason to go anything less. It seems like if you go anything less, you just start to get that rear end wheel spin that a lot of people are struggling with right now in the game. So the more rear traction you get, the better. And if you just get more traction in general, you exit corners faster, and there's not really an understeer penalty associated with this. So I think 50-50 is the way to go. I'll always set my all-wheel drive cars to 50-50 until something changes. And then the downforce, we run no rear because we want as much straight line speed as possible. And then we run enough front aero to get the turn in we desire. Your rear end aero will affect your top end more than your front. So you want your front end more to dial in the feel of your car and how much turn in you need at higher speeds. It comes into play a tiny bit at low speeds, but it's much more for high speeds. And I found this to be the sweet spot. Anything more and the car started to scrub too much at high speed, and anything less, I didn't carry enough speed through the corners. So that was my sweet spot. And then the ECU and power restrictor settings, these are just ideal for the upgrades to maximize the power. So that's why these are set there. And then ballast is for minimum weight. And another funny trick in this game, it seems like rear ballast is the way to go. Just throw it all the way to the back. I've tried to throw it all the way to the front. I've tried it in the middle. I've tried in between. And it just seems like every time in every car, even like Porsches with a crazy rear biased weight balance, that rear ballast is the way to go. It almost makes like a singular pivot point for the car to turn around, so it makes the car turn off throttle quicker, and it gives you better rear traction, so it's just a win-win. In this case, it makes a little more sense because it gets you closer to a 50-50 weight balance, but it seems like every car, this is just the way to go. So I would definitely throw it to the back. If you don't like it, you can always change it, but I've found this to be the best for me. And then we have our brake balance at 3 to the back, because again, I like rear end rotation, and being on controller, I need all that I can get, because in hairpins and slow corners, there's actually less steering angle than a wheel because of how the controller is filtered. So I need all that I can get at low speeds. And then finally, we'll go into the gearbox. So for this gearbox, we have a top speed set to 260, and then these are the gears that I use for a race. So I figure most people are going to be racing with this car. I do have Hotlap gears that I'll show as well, but these are the gear ratios I use for a race. It gives you a really good launch out of first gear, and then second and third are still good for the corners, and then fourth and fifth are unchanged from the Hotlap setup. So these are your race gears that I would recommend using. And then we'll look at what I think are optimal Hotlap gears. So this makes first gear a little bit longer, and second gear. Third gear is a tiny bit longer too, but it's just to space the gears out more evenly. But this is better in Hotlap, I think, because it gives you a little bit more gear ratio to play with out of the hairpin, so you get a little bit better exit. You're not shifting so soon. And then second and third are closer together, so you're in the power band a tiny bit longer. I would say this is worth maybe like a tenth or two. It's not a big difference, so if you do end up liking the race gearbox better, you can definitely run that. But I just think this is the optimal gear ratio for a time trial. So that's it for the setup. If any of that wasn't clear, feel free to post your questions down in the comments. But other than that, I think this is pretty straightforward, and the car is really quick. So with that being said, I hope this was all very helpful to you. If it wasn't, or if you have any questions, just put them down in the comments. If this was helpful, just leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And that's about it. So thanks for watching, everybody, and hope you enjoy the Hotlap.